It was an early December morning. It was cold, and I made my way through these old streets of the old city, and the wind followed me. And I found my way to the Arab Souk, the marketplace, where there were tourists haggling for anything they needed that morning. It was Jerusalem, early December. And I found my way to a stand where an old man, an Arab, was breathing into the open end of his hookah. And he was selling some old artifacts and some souvenirs and some disposable cameras. And he said to me, as he placed his hand against my face, he slapped me and he said, "I'll make a nice price for you." And I would learn later that that slap, which would sting for a little while, was his way of warming up to me. And I was there in Jerusalem to meet a student of mine who was going to help me go to the Western Wall and offer up a prayer. The Western Wall, the Kotel as it's known in Hebrew, the wall, is the remains of the first temple that was destroyed in 586 BC by the Babylonians, and it was the same site that the second temple stood and was destroyed by Titus and the Romans in the year 70 AD, and every day hundreds of people stand before the wall with hearts in their hands and their prayers in their pockets, and they offer up a petition like a hotline to heaven, hoping that God would answer them. I was there to offer my prayer, and we were at the top of a long staircase, and I could see below me the people praying, and then the wall. And I was with my student, whose name was Jason, and we got halfway down the wall, and he said, "Right here, on this spot," he said, "this is where I stop." And he placed his finger perpendicular to his lips like this. Shh. And I could see a glint in his eye because he was about to teach his teacher something. He said, "On this step right there, all those people down there are praying, and their prayers are rising. And I feel like here is where we meet them." So from this point on, he asked if we could descend the staircase in silence. We finally reached this narrow passageway, a gate where an old man was holding out his cup. And I threw some shekels into the tin cup. And in exchange for the shekels, he gave me a little bag of tefillin, which are basically wooden amulets with prayers written in Hebrew inside the box, and some leather strands or strips of leather attached to it. And I entered the plaza with the tefillin, and the old man said, "Whatever you do," in Hebrew, he said, "don't let the headpiece of the tefillin lean or rest against the wall," because he needs to use these again and again for every other tourist that comes to pray before the wall. I got as close as I could in front of this wall, and in Jerusalem in the winter, it's really cold. But as I got closer to the wall, it got warmer, and I began to feel the sun on my back. So I took my jacket off and wrapped it around my waist, and I took out the tefillin from the bag, and I wrapped it, the arm piece around my arm 7 times, the leather, and then the headpiece against my head, and let the straps lean down against me. And then I took the remaining piece of the leather and tethered it into the palm of my hand. And in Hebrew, what we say, translated to English, the prayer is, "I will betroth you unto me in righteousness, and I will betroth you unto me in compassion, and I will betroth you unto me in justice." And I see to the left of me an Israeli soldier, and he's wearing his olive uniform, and his M16 is pointed vertical down against his hip, and he's got his prayer book open, but his eyes are closed, and he's praying, and his lips are moving, and he's praying, and he's shaking, and he's davening, and he's praying in syncopation to the words in his heart, not the words on the page. And to the right of me, there's a Hasidic Jew with a broad hat and long sideburns and a black coat. And his book is also open, and his eyes are closed, but his lips are moving. And he too is shaking, and he's shuckling, he's davening, and he's praying in syncopation to the prayers in his heart. And it occurred to me in that moment, the memory that I learned when I was a little boy in Hebrew school, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, who once said, "Just as a man reaches up above the water, flailing his arms if he's drowning, so too does a person shake when they pray." It's as if they're drowning in their prayers, reaching for God or any angel closest to God to pull them up. And it occurred to me in that moment, with the soldier on my left and the chassid on my right, that people pray in different ways. But when they're standing before their future and the sun is on their back, we seem to all burn with a similar fire. I always believed that if you get to the wall, there's only two prayers people really pray. One, dear God, take it away. Or, dear God, bring it back. Take it away, this disease, this emptiness, this ache. Or bring it back, that which I've lost, that which I loved, the hope that I need. Take it away, bring it back. And I come this day, this morning in December, to ask God to take it away. My prayer, which I was going to write on a piece of paper, was going to say, dear God, don't let me die of AIDS. Don't let me be a candle in my mother's kitchen on the anniversary of my death. Don't celebrate my life with a panel from the Names Project Memorial Quilt on a sparkling morning. Don't celebrate the song of my soul with a candle, and don't honor me with silence. I'm not dead yet. But I forgot to write it down. I forgot to write the prayer down. It comes so far, and I forgot the prayer in my pocket. And so I thought, well, at this moment, this is the moment I've got to come up with the prayer, and it's got to be authentic, because I was taught in biblical times it was the high priest that prepared the way for our prayers, right? The high priest would stand at the tabernacle, at the altar, and would anoint everything in the house of worship, including himself, to consecrate the moment, to ready ourselves for this holy moment of prayer. He would wear a tunic that was woven in linen and embroidered with a sash, and in the hem, it is written, had fringes of crimson thread. That is how holy we stand before that which we pray. And I stood there and I thought, I haven't written it down, but I'll offer it up anyway. And I placed my fingers against the cleft of the rock. The cleft of the rock. We're told the only time that God shows his face to Moses in the Bible, he says, stand back and you will see my shadow as it passes by the cleft of the rock. I placed my fingers into that stone, and I let the headpiece of my tefillin rest against the wall. And I anointed myself with the sun on my back. And I anointed myself with the tears that rested in the corners of my eyes, and I saw at my feet the pieces of paper that had found their way outside of the slots of the Jerusalem stone, the excess freight of longing, the petitions of people who didn't make it into the wall. Their prayers matter too. And I searched my mind for any prayer from my childhood, and I thought of what I'd come to ask of God, but the only thing in my heart was one word. So I offered it up. I closed my eyes, and I said, dear God, thanks. Thanks for the sun on my back, and thanks for the soldier on my left and the chassid on my right, and thanks for the old man at the gate and the shekels in my pocket that I could put in his tin cup, and thanks for the eyes that will love me in the journey ahead, and the arms that will hold me. I've always believed that the greatest prayer we could ever say really is, dear God, please help me to remember my prayers. Because I think we forget our prayers. I think God answers almost all of our prayers, but we, or I, forget that I'm always praying. So help me remember my prayers. But that moment at the wall, I realized maybe even a greater prayer. Not take it away or bring it back or help me remember this prayer, but thanks. I was once told that gratitude is the opposite of taking things for granted. It's the willingness to see things differently, the willingness to see and experience life in a different way. Gratitude. In the very beginning of my HIV infection in the late 80s, I met a young man who would come into my HIV support group. He'd raise his hand and he would say, "I'm dying of AIDS and I'm scared." And the facilitator responded by saying, "Got it. So tell me something. What's wrong with that? Where is that bad?" And he said, "I'm dying of AIDS and I'm scared." She said, I got that. We all heard you, so what's wrong with that?" We all leaned forward because she was about to teach us something that I've never forgotten. She said, "The quality of life, including and most of all happiness, isn't dependent upon the circumstances of your life. Circumstances are neutral. The quality of your life and your happiness depends upon what you do with the circumstances you've been given." So I'm standing at the wall and I'm thinking, perhaps the most persuasive way to relate to the circumstances we're given, whether they're demanding or not, is to consider a moment of gratitude. Because in that moment of gratitude, there's a chance, as you are demanding a blessing from a curse or exacting a miracle out of that moment, that you realize that you're close upon the hour, right, where everything is possible.